The Varinthian ambassador stood frozen before the massive crystalline archive, her four eyes blinking in a sequence that indicated deep confusion among her species. She had served on the Galactic Council for over 300 standard cycles, and she believed she understood the nature of every species within the known galaxy. She had been wrong about humans. The archive chamber stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with glowing memory crystals that contained the history of every spacefaring civilization. The Varinthians had built this place over 12,000 years ago, long before humans had discovered fire. They had recorded everything, every war, every treaty, every extinction, every uplift. Ambassador Kethris activated the human section of the archive with a trembling appendage. The records had been updated recently, and what they contained had caused an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 47 species now waited in the Grand Assembly Hall, demanding explanations that Kethris herself did not possess. The first holographic record materialized before her. It showed a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, Earth. The humans called it home. The record was dated approximately 200 of their years before present time. A human voice narrated the ancient footage. It spoke of creatures called dolphins. The images showed sleek gray beings swimming through Earth's oceans, playing in the waves, communicating through clicks and whistles. The humans had studied these creatures for generations. They had learned that dolphins recognized themselves in mirrors. They gave each other names. They mourned their dead. They played games with no purpose other than joy. The humans had looked at these beings and seen something familiar. They saw intelligence waiting to bloom. And instead of ignoring it, instead of exploiting it, they had decided to help it grow. Kethris watched the progression of records with growing amazement. Human scientists had developed technology specifically designed to enhance dolphin cognition. They had created communication devices that translated between species. They had built underwater habitats where dolphins could learn and experiment with tools. They had done all of this not for profit or power, but simply because they believed it was the right thing to do. The process had taken over 150 years. 3 generations of humans had dedicated their lives to this single project. They had faced opposition from their own kind. Some humans had argued that uplifting another species was dangerous. Others had claimed it was impossible. Many had simply not cared about creatures they considered animals. But the humans who believed had never stopped working. They had refined their techniques. They had learned from their failures. They had celebrated every small success as if it were a miracle. And eventually, they had succeeded. The archive showed the moment of first true contact. A dolphin named Whisper had used the translation device to construct a complete sentence in human language. She had looked at the scientists gathered around her tank and asked why they had given her people the gift of understanding. The lead scientist, an elderly woman named Dr. Shara Chun, had answered simply. She had said that intelligence was too precious to remain trapped. She had said that the universe was lonely and that humans wanted more friends to share it with. Kethris moved to the next section of records. The dolphins were only the beginning. Humans had identified 17 species on their planet that showed potential for enhanced cognition. They had created separate programs for each one. Some of these programs had failed. Others were still ongoing. But 5 had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. The great apes came next. Gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans had all been given the tools to reach their full cognitive potential. The process was slower than with dolphins, requiring genetic modifications that took several generations to stabilize. But by the time humans achieved interstellar travel, their closest evolutionary cousins were walking beside them as equals. Kethris watched recordings of a gorilla named Thunder addressing the United Earth Assembly. He spoke of peace and cooperation. He spoke of the debt his people owed to humanity and how they intended to repay it through partnership rather than servitude. The human delegates had wept openly. They had not wanted repayment. They had simply wanted family. The elephants followed a different path. Their intelligence had always been vast, but their physical form limited their ability to manipulate technology. Humans had solved this problem through a combination of genetic enhancement and cybernetic integration. Elephants retained their massive bodies, but gained the ability to interface directly with computer systems through neural implants. The archive showed an elephant engineer named Distant Storm designing the first faster-than-light communication array. Her mind could process calculations that would have taken human computers years to complete. She worked alongside human colleagues who treated her not as a tool or a curiosity, but as a respected peer. Kethris paused the records. She needed to understand something fundamental. Every other spacefaring species in the galaxy had achieved their position through competition and conquest. The Varinthians had eliminated 3 rival species on their homeworld before achieving dominance. The Krithani had enslaved their planet's secondary intelligent species for thousands of years before that species finally went extinct. The Molthari had simply consumed every other thinking being they encountered. This was the natural way. Intelligence was a weapon, and weapons were used against enemies. The galaxy operated on this principle. It had always operated on this principle. But humans had looked at potential competitors and seen potential allies instead. They had taken beings that could have threatened their dominance and elevated them to equality. They had made themselves vulnerable, and they had done it deliberately. The archive continued its revelations. Crows and ravens had been uplifted next. Their small bodies housed incredibly dense neural networks that proved remarkably receptive to enhancement. Within 3 generations, the Corvids had developed a civilization parallel to humanity's own. They built towering cities in the forests and mountains, connected to human society, but distinctly separate. A raven philosopher named Dark Wing had written extensively about the nature of the gift humanity had given. She argued that humans had not created intelligence in the Corvids. They had simply removed the barriers that prevented that intelligence from expressing itself fully. Every uplifted species, she claimed, had always possessed the seed of sentience. Humans had merely provided the water and sunlight needed for that seed to grow. The octopi were perhaps the strangest success. These creatures had evolved independently from all other intelligent life on Earth. Their cognition worked in ways that even enhanced dolphins found alien. Humans had struggled for decades to understand octopus thought patterns well enough to assist their development. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. A young human child had formed a friendship with an octopus in a coastal research facility. The child had no scientific training, no preconceptions about what octopi should or should not be capable of. She had simply talked to her 8-armed friend as if conversation between them was the most natural thing in the world. The researchers had studied this interaction and realized their mistake. They had been trying to make octopi think like humans. Instead, they needed to help octopi think like better octopi. The approach changed and progress accelerated rapidly. By the time humans made first contact with the Galactic Council, they did not come alone. Their delegation included representatives from 6 fully sentient species, all originating from the same small planet. The Council had been shocked. They had assumed that diverse beings before them represented an alliance of multiple worlds. Learning that they all came from Earth had caused considerable concern. Kethris remembered that day. She had been a junior diplomat then, barely trusted with carrying documents. She had watched the human ambassador introduce each member of the delegation. She had seen the way they interacted with each other. There was no hierarchy. There was no dominant species giving orders to subordinates. There was only partnership. The council had debated for weeks about how to respond. Some members had argued that humans were dangerous. A species that could create allies from nothing was a species that could build an unstoppable army. Others had suggested that humans were foolish. They had wasted resources, elevating beings that would eventually turn against them. Neither prediction had proven accurate. In the century since first contact, humans and their uplifted partners had spread across dozens of star systems. They had established colonies where multiple species lived together in genuine harmony. They had faced conflicts with aggressive civilizations and had emerged victorious not through superior firepower, but through superior cooperation. The archive showed a recording from the HFY War. A human general and a dolphin admiral had coordinated a defensive action that saved 3 colony worlds from destruction. The dolphin's underwater tactical thinking complemented the humans' land-based strategies perfectly. Neither could have succeeded alone. Together, they were unstoppable. More recently, humans had begun looking beyond their uplifted partners. They had identified several primitive species on other worlds that showed potential for cognitive enhancement. They had approached the Council with a proposal to establish an official uplift program, open to any civilization that wished to participate. The proposal had caused outrage. Several Council members had accused humans of attempting to build a network of loyal servant species. Others had claimed that uplifting aliens would disrupt the natural order of galactic civilization. A few had even suggested that humans were planning to eventually uplift every species in the galaxy, creating an unstoppable swarm of human-allied intelligences. Catherus had attended those debates. She had listened to the accusations and the fears, and she had watched the human representative respond to each one with patience and calm. Ambassador James Okonkwo had explained that humans did not seek servants or soldiers. They sought friends. They sought diverse perspectives that could help solve problems no single species could tackle alone. They sought the simple joy of watching another being discover the universe for the first time. He had talked about loneliness. Before their uplifted partners, humans had spent their entire existence as the only truly intelligent species on their planet. They had looked at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. They had told stories about alien visitors and searched the cosmos for signals from other civilizations. The discovery that they were alone on Earth had been painful in ways that other species could not understand. Humans did not want to be alone anymore, and they did not want any other being to experience that loneliness if they could prevent it. Catherus deactivated the archive and stood in silence for a long moment. The Council was waiting for her report. They wanted to know if humans were a threat. They wanted to know if the Uplift program should be banned. They wanted simple answers to complex questions. She did not have simple answers. She had only the truth. Humans were unlike any species the galaxy had ever encountered. They did not see intelligence as a weapon to be hoarded. They saw it as a light to be shared. They had taken the foundational principle of galactic civilization and rejected it completely. And they had thrived because of that rejection. Catherus walked slowly toward the Grand Assembly Hall, preparing to deliver her conclusions. She would tell the Council that humans were not a threat. She would tell them that the Uplift program should be approved. She would tell them that the galaxy needed to learn from humanity's example. She knew that most of the Council would not listen. They were too old, too set in their ways, too afraid of change. But some would hear her words. Some would understand. And perhaps, given enough time, the light that humans had kindled would spread throughout the stars. Perhaps one day, no intelligent being would have to face the universe alone. That was what humans wanted. That was what they had always wanted. Friends to share the darkness with.